I'm Guy Cooper, I work for the Environment Agency. The Environment Agency is the environmental regulator covering England and has a wide remit of roles around protecting the environment, people and wildlife, which can include water resources or things like waste management and regulating nuclear industry, but also trying to manage the flood risk. So I'm a senior advisor in flood and coastal erosion risk management, and there's a significant flood risk in England from all sorts of different sources, from rivers and from the sea, from groundwater and from heavy rainfall incidents as well. So there's a lot of people and communities at risk of flooding. And our job is to try and analyse that risk and make sure people are aware of it, know what action to take, and if we can, try to reduce that risk. So on a day-to-day basis, as a senior advisor, I'm analysing data from modelling projects, computer modelling projects that show us where it might flood and how deep it might be and how fast that floodwater might flow. And then comparing that with things like ground survey data, we can try to identify where there might be a location at risk where we could do a scheme or a project to try and reduce that risk. And this could be traditional hard engineering techniques that you may have seen when you've been out and about, so flood embankments or building a flood storage reservoir, seawalls, that sort of thing. But it's not just about hard engineering, we've also been looking at natural flood management, and this is lots of different things. So inland, natural flood management is things like can we plant trees in the upper catchments of rivers to try and slow the flow a bit, to try and reduce all the rainwater getting to one point at the same time, to not just stop people flooding, but if they do flood, reduce the peak of the flood so it's not so damaging for them. On the coast, we look at things like restoring coastal wetlands, so things like salt marsh and sand dunes, those kind of natural habitats on the coast, because they're really good at dissipating wave energy and reducing the flood risk there. And they're really good in front of our seawalls and that sort of thing, at reducing the damage to our seawalls. So we've been looking at those kind of projects as well. So there's a balance of hard engineering and soft engineering there. In addition to that, we look at adaptation as well. So it may be that you can't reduce the risk of flooding with hard defences, and it might be that natural flood management options aren't an option. What else can you do? Now, adaptation covers a wide range of things, and so I spend my time looking at what we can do for communities to help them adapt. Making homes more flood resilient maybe, so that they're not as damaged during a flood event and people can move back more quickly and get on with their lives again and recover more quickly. But in extreme cases, it could even be looking at where could those people move to if they needed to, and that's a particular problem on our coast. So I work on our rivers and our coast, trying to do those kind of schemes, analysing that sort of data, and then trying to build up a project and get the funding in place, working with stakeholders and partners such as local authorities to fund those projects and move forward with them. Now, I do find our coast particularly interesting. The coast I cover is Norfolk, Suffolk and Essex. It's soft and eroding and it's very dynamic, and the particular bit that I cover, we've got the Norfolk Broads, which is a large intertidal wetland area. We've got 9 estuaries, there's dozens of islands, especially in Essex, which are inhabited. And with projected climate change and projected sea level rise values, we know that flood risk is going to get greater and a bigger challenge for those people. So it's, as well as the day-to-day trying to identify schemes with the data we've got now, I do spend my time working on longer term strategies as well. So things like the Broaden Futures Initiative, where we work with communities and all the other authorities locally to try and say, for the next 100 years, how might we manage and adapt to that flood risk? What are our options? Let's look at those options and how do we implement them? So there's a day-to-day element and there's a long-term strategy element, and that keeps the job really interesting. Now, on the strategy side, particularly aware that it's the next generation of engineers and planners and politicians that are going to have to think about these challenges once we've all retired. So that's why I became a STEM ambassador. And with a colleague, Kelly Fisher, we've been working on a series of STEM teaching resources to try to illustrate how people might adapt to flood risk on the coast. Those should be available on the TES website under the banner of Coastaliers, because it's just really important to get the next generation to start thinking about those challenges and how they might move some of those forward, because we can adapt and we can move forward. Finally, the Environment Agency has an incident role, which I don't think many people know. So we have a flood warning service, and I'm also a flood warning duty officer. So I've been doing that for about 16 years, and we work with the Met Office and all the emergency services to deliver a forecast for rainfall and for tidal surges, and then try to work out who's potentially at risk from flooding, and then we can warn them through our flood warning service. And that's a really interesting part of our role. So we have staff on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at a time, to try to cover that flood risk and get the warnings out if needed. And we also have staff that go out and shut some of our 350 odd gates that we have on our Norfolk, Suffolk and Essex coast. And we have 6 large tidal barriers as well, which need to be operated during certain tides. So I hope you can see it's an interesting role. It's a great place to work in Environment Agency, and there's more information below. Thank you.